Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. Netflix is a very divisive and controversial company, a streaming service that's become notorious for its poor quality control. However, their original animation studio has actually had a pretty good track record and has become a worthy rival for its potential competition. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking every villain from Netflix Animation Studios movies. So, grab your sweet or salty popcorn and get ready for a countdown. The Jade Emperor from the Monkey King. This almighty high immortal is planning a special party for his fellow gods, but his planning keeps being interrupted by Monkey King's quest to join the immortals. This villain is introduced as a lavish and pompous snob who is willing to erase a baby monkey that's been born with superpowers, which is enough to make us despise him as a potential antagonist. However, all of that promise is thrown into the wind because instead of leaning into his villainy, the Jade Emperor just ends up being your typical lair reclusive baddie who does little more than bark generic orders from his desk.
Whatever you do,
don't let him leave with that book!
Heck, he rarely even does that, because he tends to just flat out ignore Monkey shenanigans or turn his nose at other gods' complaints about the Monkey King. Look, I get that he's supposed to be so stuck up that he doesn't care about other people's problems, and the Buddha has a strict eye on him, but this just makes him seem like he wants nothing to do with the movie he's in. The cherry on top is that the Jade Emperor only takes action once Monkey makes things personal, but even then, his threat is all words. A monkey is so overpowered at this point that the fight abruptly ends after a few microseconds. This is already one of Netflix Animation's worst films, and the Jade Emperor does nothing whatsoever to redeem it. Heck, he's the head honcho of the Immortals, yet ends up being the least interesting god in the film. Mr. and Mrs. Twit from the Twits. This evil married couple are very eager to open up their scammy theme park, but their city denies their license to run it, so the two decide to join the upcoming mayoral election. After now seeing every movie from Netflix Animation Studios, I can confidently say that The Twits is their worst film to date. A huge aspect why comes down to Mr. and Mrs. Twit themselves, as the movie uses the fact that these characters were originally written as gross nitwits as a free pass to make its villains as obnoxious and repulsive as possible, resulting in characters that lack any of the charm of their book counterparts, while failing to compensate for their insufferable presences in any way.
I look so perspirational!
And I sound like a genius, a proper genius. Worship me.
Heck, even their villain songs are ear-achingly rubbish, and feature a singing double for Mr. Twit that distractingly sounds nothing like Johnny Vegas.
Oh, the problem is you.
Mr. and Mrs. Twit also come across like they're making their villainy up as they go along, not in a fun, chaotic way, but more like the movie has no idea what to do with them both, as it desperately struggles to develop a pair of villains from one of Dahl's smaller books.
We would like to adapt you.
To adapt me?
I wouldn't even say that Mr. and Mrs. Twit are particularly threatening either. Sure, they try to be creepy, and they can get their way sometimes, but it's hard to be intimidated by villains who are scared off by bloody cheese whiz.
Not on my watch!
That's another problem. There are so many contradictions to these villains that it's like the movie can't decide on a solid, clear identity for them. Like, it paints them as slovenly and cheapskate, yet it also wants to modernize them as tech-savvy inventors who have built their own steampunk home and own multiple TVs, or it'll portray them both as an unhappily married couple that love making each other miserable, but then we'll get random moments of romantic passion out of nowhere. Mr. and Mrs. Twit are a showcase for how overindulging in two characters' worst traits can lead to messy disaster, as the duo are too silly to be scary, but also too annoying to be funny. Nikki Narwhal from Thelma the Unicorn. Nikki is a famous pop star, but she's facing bad reviews, and her fame soon starts to crumble once Thelma the Unicorn becomes a mega sensation. So the diva Narwhal works with her assistant, Megan, to overthrow her new sparkly competition. Now, Nikki does make for a menacing nautical beast, a poor-tempered pop star with a nasty habit for throwing tantrums, who wields a majestic and sharp horn while towering over the farm animals as a huge, blubbery porpoise. but she's not rageful for no reason, because it's very obvious that she suffers from a severe amount of insecurity, going to show how fame and fortune can't magically cure self-doubt or anger issues.
My fans love Blubber Drubble. It's the #1 song in the world right now.
You're right, Nikki. #1, but with a 2 after it.
Heck, you'll notice how Nikki is a horned creature just like Thelma, so the Narwhal possibly sees an aspect of herself in her own rival, a sentiment that the film leans into once Thelma's beautiful song about authenticity surprisingly inspires Nikki to be her own real self. However, as promising as Nikki is as a satire on celebrity culture's unhealthy pressures, it's hard to commend her as a villain when her minion does way more as an antagonist. You see, Megan demonstrates cunning, manipulation, and even bloodthirst as an over-devoted Nikki Narwhal crazed fan, while Nikki herself spends most of the film hot tub sulking and making vague orders that don't exactly scream strategy.
You know what to do, Maggie Poo.
I sure do.
If I'm honest, this dynamic could have worked way better if Megan was a control freak manager and Nikki was a submissive client with low self-esteem, because Nikki doesn't thrive that much as a traditional villain, and Megan is far more entertaining as a monstrous sociopath than as a put-upon office assistant. The Orphan Services agents. From the Willoughbys, a very cautious Tim is eager to escape his new nanny, Linda, so he contacts the Orphan Services agency, but these agents just make things worse. Some might debate that these characters are simply following child protection practices, but there's actually a sinister side to them. For starters, they're a very cold and robotic bunch who fail to completely care about these kids. I mean, not only do they callously split up these siblings, who have always only ever had each other, but said divide also sends Jane into a pessimistic loss of hope, and Tim is forced to live in a prison-like cell as a runaway foster kid.
Sometimes you're the cat, sometimes you're the mouse. At least he's got a box.
The agency's leader is also pretty callous and spiteful too, as she uses the word orphan like it's some kind of slur.
I demand you leave our home!
You're the orphan.
And even cruelly mocks Linda's own orphan trauma.
We tried to find her a home, but no one ever wanted her.
That's not true.
Not to mention, you could actually say that these agents are the opposite extreme of the horrible Willoughby parents, because they're too attentive and too strict.
You know how long we have to soak these oats so they're soft enough we won't choke a child?
Heck, their oppressive meticulousness is what makes them such effective antagonists, as there's a no-nonsense discipline to their systematic bureaucracy that results in very efficient villainy. Although, the agents do host the eventual adoption ceremony in the movie's happy ending, so maybe their ice can be melted. Father Bests, from Wendell and Wild. This respected priest is the principal of Rustbank's Catholic school. However, once this father becomes a thorn in the evil Claxon side, they murder the principal in cold blood. Luckily for Bests though, Wendell and Wild bring him back to life, and the zombie priest becomes an integral cog in the Claxon's twisted scheme. At first, Best seems like a decent bloke, and a humble educator, but once demons grant him resurrection, and a fancy new makeover, the priest ends up abandoning his religious principles for money, as he starts feeling invincible, and hypocritically commits every sin in the Bible just to support his school in a dying town.
I can see your hat.
Ding dong! Gotcha!
Now, yes, Bess is a very jittery fellow, and very much the least threatening baddie in this movie. However, every time this villain faces an obstacle, it doesn't actually take him that long to brush off his panicked anxiety and pitch a cunning solution.
What's the game plan, Padre?
Ding dong ditch. With a twist.
Behind Bess' new sense of omnipotence though, is a pathetic mortal who isn't that powerful, because despite his rise to power as a shady principal, he is also one of many gullible victims of the Claxon's con game, and he too faces the consequences of the hair cream's temporary limitations.
Let me tell you, reports of my death were greatly exaggerated.
The King and Queen of the Crown from the Sea Beast. These rotten royals have been spreading the lie that all sea creatures are evil, while sending hunters to wipe them all out. The truth is though, this King and Queen just want to grow their empire. These spoiled and pampered villains mainly stay in their luxury palace, while others do all the heavy lifting for their tyranny. However, that's the whole point. This movie wants to show how the privileged can be lazy cowards who exploit the working class for selfish gain. and control the narrative with commissioned propaganda. So, defeating these two isn't about strength or strategy, but questioning the very monarchy itself, and finding the truth in a civilization where royalty has doctored history.
This is just nonsense.
Says you. But the book says otherwise. And it's going to outlast both of us.
Everyone can fall for brainwashing or indoctrination. Anyone who thinks that they are the special exception has just let their ego rush to their head. What matters is how we fight back against said propaganda, and our heroes demonstrate the anarchic and brave solution.
Who are you to malign your king and queen with such falsehoods? You have no right to speak.
I have every right!
Sure, these Imperial weasels do end up running away in the end, but the general implies that they'll make them pay, and the society will now certainly begin questioning all authority. Ms. Malkin? From Leo. When a classroom's teacher has to go on maternity leave, she gets a strict replacement called Ms. Malkin, who ends up kidnapping the beloved advice-giving class pet, Leo, only to then abandon the lizard in the middle of the Everglades. Okay, so in the grand scope of Netflix villains, Ms. Malkin is a rather petty baddie, and nowhere near as evil as other crooks on this list. That said, she's still a very memorable antagonist. To begin with, she encompasses everything that kids hate about overly stern and old-fashioned substitute teachers. From a cold, icy approach to educating kids, to a sour disregard towards more beloved teachers' methods.
You do not want demerits.
There's also something unnerving about her willingness to lie straight to her kids, and how far she will go to achieve adulation and respect as a teacher, leaving us to question where a line is even drawn.
Well, let's try and be happy for Leo. He's doing what he wanted most.
However, it would be unfair to simply sum up Malkin as just a mean teacher, because much like Miss Finster from Recess, she's actually a heavily humanized aging teacher, someone who dreamed of emulating her idol, only to slowly lose her motivation after years of being stuck as an underappreciated sub.
I put my whole life into teaching, just to be a mere substitute. Never had my own class, never got any respect.
As bitter as Malkin seems, there is sincere ambition deep underneath all of her salt, and it's the kindly Leo that helps her to remember who she wanted to be in the first place.
I know you got it in you. You're gonna get those kids first place tomorrow.
So, while Malkin does uphold her terrible lies all the way to the finale, it doesn't take that much to pressure into confessing, plus the grumpy teacher does redeem herself by finally embracing her role as a leader for children, and encouraging her quirky students to also be themselves too. Buffalo Belzer? From Wendell and Wild, this underworld lord is the tyrannical ruler of the Scream Fair, an afterlife theme park that's designed to barbarically torture its eternal souls. Even though this villain spends a big fraction of the film lounging about, like some kind of lazy slob, we still get a vividly disturbing picture of who he is. A cruel and narcissistic demon who enjoys making spirits suffer on a daily basis, and relishes in their terrified worship of his hellish majesty.
Say my name. Belzer! Say my name.
We have no idea what kind of lives these souls live too, so there's a huge chance the Belzer is tormenting innocent dead people without any remorse as a demon. Oh, and even his own minions aren't free from their boss's brutality.
See? That wasn't so hard, right?
This cruelty doesn't stop at his job though, because Buffalo also acts oppressive as a dad too, as he forces his sons, Wendell and Wild, into the tedious task of protecting his vanity by serving as his hair-grow farmers, all while neglecting their ideas for a better underworld.
Our fair is so much better than Belzer's dump, but you couldn't keep your mouth shut.
No.
This misguided approach to raising kids has also resulted in all of Wendell and Wild's siblings running away, going to show how control-freak parenting has its consequences. While I did say that Belzer is a couch potato as a villain, he does get his butt up in the finale, when he angrily goes after his rebellious sons. On the field, Buffalo makes up for his slacking by totally owning his kaiju size, as he dominates Rustbank as a ginormous monster while cleverly utilizing his bird's eye view.
There you are, my thieving mudflutes.
However, Raoul's beautiful painting of a strong mother protecting her child helps Belzer reflect on his poor parenting, and the demon attempts to redeem himself.
Can't build a new fair without the designers.
You mean us?
We'll make you proud, Pop.
That's right.
I do not blame folks for finding it hard to forgive a character this evil, but maybe it's a bit unfair to project human morality onto a literal devil, and Belzer does do what he can to amend his past villainy.
Good old soul jockeys. Dad must have said that.
King James, from America the Motion Picture, this greedy and slothful British monarch is determined to rule America and stop George Washington from starting a revolution. America the Motion Picture is a film that stretches its one sketch-length joke into a whole feature and delivers very hit or miss comedy. However, hot damn does it have some really fun villains who both relish in their over-exaggerated British evil. The appeal of King James comes down to how wildly overpampered he is as a royal, as the movie goes ham on depicting him as a grotesque glutton who will shamelessly put his voracious appetite before any kind of loyal patriotism.
Say what you will about these colonists, but frying a chicken and putting it in a bucket, that's a solid idea.
James is also a massive man-baby who can't handle anyone disobeying his kingly authority, going as far as to throw a full-on public tantrum just because one person broke his oppressive rules.
They are the rules. I know. What is the point of being a ruler if people are not following your rules?
There's also this theatrical grandeur to his presentation, and this inspires a fantastic steampunk luxury design for his entire villain aesthetic. Oh, and the fact that he's pet as a sentient evil football just adds to the over-the-top commitment to his British snob image.
Maybe that's true in Britain.
However, James is so consumed by his gluttony, lust, and avarice that he foolishly fails to catch on that his partner in crime is a Judas. The Sandman, from In Your Dreams. When siblings Stevie and Elliot find a way to enter the dream realm, they decide to locate the Sandman, in hopes that the sleep deity can help fix their parents' struggling marriage. However, the Sandman's solution is to trap Stevie in a fake dream world version of her life. I do quite like how this film goes all the way with this villain's sand aesthetic, from giving him a grand MC Escher-inspired sand layer to how sand particles naturally dust off of his body. It's also awesome to hear the great British Iranian comedian Omid Jalili voicing this villain, because he's a very underrated character actor who brings so much engaging confidence and charisma to the part.
Yeah, pretty standard stuff, really. Let me show you how it works.
As a villain, it's already creepy how this being can spy on people, but the fact that he uses this collected data to pander to the kids is even more unsettling.
Dreams where, say, you save your secret crush from a burning building. How's my hair?
Not to mention, this weirdo was sent a child into a coma just so that he can keep her locked up in an uncanny valley dream, while giving Stevie zero freedom to change her mind.
Sandman! I don't want this. I want to go home.
When our heroes eventually escape, the Sandman puts his everything into stopping them, and we get to see him imaginatively weaponizing his very own sandcastle, making for one dang creative showdown.
This is my dream.
The Sandman's motives come from his heart, but he is actually incredibly misguided. You see, the Sandman actually thinks that humans shouldn't face nightmares or harsh reality, hence why he goes to desperate measures and unfairly frames Night Mara, the nightmare deity.
Night Mara isn't protecting you, she's preventing you from the ultimate dream come true.
Now, this twist isn't exactly cleverly foreshadowed, because we don't even meet the Sandman himself until the 50-minute mark, and the film puts way more energy and time into tricking us with its over-the-top red herring. However, the sentiment behind this twist is really good, because it helpfully teaches kids to better appreciate the many values of nightmares and accept that they have a scientific purpose, despite their intensity.
Nightmares make us strong, so we can face what's really scary in life. The unknown.
Walter and Helga Willoughby, from the Willoughbys, these awful snobby parents are shockingly cruel to their 4 wonderful kids. But these children get so sick of their mum and dad that they decide to trick the 2 creeps into going on a dangerous and life-threatening vacation. Helga and Walter are so cartoonily evil that we can't help but laugh at their ridiculously bad parenting and bizarre character quirks, as the two respond to the very idea of parental responsibility with overreactive melodrama or sulky annoyance.
I've got it!
Oh, mother sweet.
There's also something hilariously embarrassing about them too, because Walter comes from a long line of incredible people, yet he's achieved nothing exceptional himself, and his wife is just as indulgent and mediocre as him.
Oh, you want Mother to have yarn, don't you? You must. You like the sweaters.
What I love the most about these villains though, is how genuinely in love they are as a baddie couple. Unhappily married couples begrudgingly becoming a team can lack spice, so it's really refreshing to see a husband and wife villain duo being in sincere romantic bliss, all while they rudely ignore everyone outside their lovey-dovey bubble.
These pointy hats, splendid, Snugglebuck.
Those pitons add such brawn to your manly feet.
One more praise. I really like how the movie teases the idea of these two changing, only to reveal a funny fake-out, all because it pokes humorous fun at the annoying cliche of last-minute and unearned villain redemptions. Not every villain needs to have a sudden change of heart in the finale, and it's okay to just let them embrace being evil. The King from The Magician's Elephant. When a magician accidentally summons an elephant, the exotic mammal grabs the attention of the eccentric king. However, a young boy named Peter needs this elephant to help him find his sister. So the king sets 3 impossible tasks to Peter, and Peter has to complete all 3 challenges to win the elephant. This king isn't stereotypically evil, but rather recklessly immature. He's an impulsive man-child who demands 24/7 fun, all while ignoring the very idea of consequences. Not to mention, 2 of the 3 tasks are technically life-threatening challenges, and His Highness completely neglects any safety measures for both, resulting in incredibly high-stakes danger for poor Peter. Now, sure, Peter agreed to these tasks, but considering there's a power dynamic at play, you could argue that Peter has been pushed into a corner, because saying a hard no to an egotistical king wouldn't exactly guarantee 0 risks.
And an impossible fight is the best kind, right, kid?
Stands to reason,
The kid's up for it, I told you.
Even though this king is a villain, there's no denying that this royal is a highly engaging antagonist who steals the movie as a high-energy showman with a bubbly game show host vibe going for him.
Up, you will fly.
What? Fly? How?
Hello, it's supposed to be impossible.
Sure, the king can be rude or insensitive and even aggressively stern about challenge rules, but there's something lovable about his big kid energy, love for life, and foppish charms. I mean, in spite of his juvenile abuse of power, we do get glimpses of a decent bloke under all of his bravado. Like, not only does he sympathize with the grieving countess so much that he turns task 3 into a chance to make her laugh for the first time in ages, but once Peter wins the elephant, His Majesty uses his trademark charisma to convince the magician to send it home. With a bit of growing up, I do actually think that this lovable idiot could be a good king. Vic Diamond from Thelma the Unicorn. Vic is a shady and money-hungry music mogul who goes from managing the career-declining Nikki Narwhal to leeching off of the new viral fame of the talented Thelma the Unicorn, who is really a farm pony in drag. Look, Thelma the Unicorn is a run-of-the-mill rags-to-riches flick with juvenile lowbrow comedy and cliched storytelling. However, some things about this middling movie actually stick, and Vic happens to be one of them. For someone so goofy and dorky, Vic carries himself with a lot of smooth swagger, and that's all down to how much he owns his puppet master role in the film. You see, while he's not exactly talented himself, he's still a cunning master of music marketing with sharp eyes for what surface level gimmicks will get sales.
Truth is the death of success. The most important thing in the music biz is how you look. Why don't you chew on that knowledge bomb and see how it tastes?
On top of this, Vic has also perfected the craft of emotional manipulation, as he takes creepy advantage of the new-to-fame Thelma by abusing his position as an experienced veteran, deflecting her valid concerns, and slimily guilting her into doing things that she's uncertain about.
Would you like me to cancel the show?
Although, as snake-like as Vic is, that's not to say that he won't resort to more on-the-nose trickery, or even full-on murder attempts. Heck, he often shamelessly revels in childish acts of spite whenever given the opportunity, especially when it comes to his dismissive treatment of the already struggling Nikki Narwhal. The last thing I'd praise about Vic is how surprisingly authentic he is to the real current music industry. Say what you will about this film, but I have to commend how it craftily uses Vic to take unfiltered and brutally honest jabs at modern music's recent creative decay.
We're not making your music, you silly goose. The algorithm will give us the groove.
What are you talking about?
So we're halfway through this video. Do you want to see my videos early before they go up on YouTube and without any ads, or gain access to special bonus Jambareeqi videos? Then consider joining my Patreon today to start enjoying rewards just like these. The Dragon King from the Monkey King. The Dragon King is a bitter, water-dwelling god who hates landfolk so much that he plans to flood the world. However, he needs to get back his precious magic stick from Monkey first. This terrible Journey to the West adaptation is garbage. But the Dragon King? He is one saving grace for this schlocky film. Heck, compared to the insufferable Monkey himself, he's a bloody delight. I mean, there's this delicious campiness to this villain that's undeniably fun, and the fact that Bowen Yang voices this fiend is like throwing glitter confetti onto a rainbow.
Would you lie for me? Get your paws dirty. You'll have to be manipulative, vicious, and cunning.
The Dragon King's design also screams fabulous fashion, from his sparkly makeup to his lavish, colourful period costume. This rotten royal really owns being evil in style. Oh, and if you think that this dragon couldn't be any more queer-coded, he even gets a swinging musical number that shines and shimmers as a hark back to Broadway-inspired villain songs of the 90s.
Second-rate and inferior to the air-breathing, land-walking, sun-kissers I despise.
As a villain, the Dragon King does lean more towards being a sassy comic relief, and he can let his immature emotions get the best of him, but his talent for stage show theatrics do come in handy for creative tricks against Monkey.
If you believe it, so will your audience. Hear the new sides, try not to step on each other's lines, keep the scene contained. I only had time to poison one tree.
Plus, he's also a villain that knows how to utilize others as chess pieces, whether that means sending worthy demons to battle a cocky monkey, or sneakily exploiting a peasant from a drought-suffering village as a mole, only to end up viciously double-crossing the latter once she's no longer useful.
Tell your village the drought is over.
It's all over.
Yes, the Dragon King does become a powerful threat in the finale, and his fight against Monkey lasts way longer than Jade Emperor's. But Monkey's ridiculous power level still leads to a boring showdown that puts shallow spectacle over genuine tension. Chaz Hunt from Back to the Outback. This zookeeper has gained a reputation as a charismatic stage show host with a knack for apprehending scary animals for entertainment. So once his Dangerous Critters exhibit goes on the run, he tries to get them all back himself. Chaz brings a lot to the table as an unlikely and unusual animated kids movie antagonist. You see, in a hilarious twist, it turns out that this Aussie is just a guy from Florida who grew up as a Steve Irwin superfan that decided to fabricate an entire persona based on the Down Under icon. So we end up with a villain who is trying to commit to a bit, and we as an audience have no idea how far he'll take it. It's almost like he's a Sacha Baron Cohen character.
Once the most famous koala in the world. He had 100 million fans in China alone.
120.
Now he's dead.
I saw his lips move.
At the same time, Chaz is actually genuinely frightened of high-risk animals, to the point where he's willing to spread mass hysteria about our heroes as he abuses his celebrity power to get the public to join his paranoia. This fear also makes for some entertaining animal hunting scenes, because Chaz is clearly terrified and unqualified, so he'll either comically mess up for laughs, or be totally surprised at his own accidental catches.
I actually did it!
I knew you would, Dad!
Who are you gonna call? Chaz Hunt. What's the name again? Chaz Hunt.
The bonus for this villain has to be the fact that his sidekick is his own son, who is basically a mini Steve Irwin, someone who adorably idolizes his dad's character so much that he's ironically become the far superior animal catcher, and this higher competence can make for some funny juxtaposition.
Oh well, we gave it our best shot, Chazzy. Maybe we should
hack into the mainframe and get an ID on that license plate?
Hey?
It's a catering van for the Western Plains School. We can't get to that school first unless we run every red light.
This already charming father-son dynamic takes an unexpected but engaging switch when Chaz finally reveals the truth, only to try and desperately live up to his facade, or while his son has to now process how his dad is a compulsive liar. So we're essentially watching a literal Florida man cosplaying as a warped, off-the-rails version of Steve Irwin as his son goes for an existential crisis about animal kind. It's so bonkers and out there that I love it.
Dad, that's a bazooka!
I was saving this for your birthday, son, but this is an emergency.
Although, once our heroes rescue Chaz's son, the Nutter finally calms down, comes to peace with scary-looking animals, and even remembers a part of himself that did initially love these creatures. Whether Chaz deserves forgiveness is up for debate, but I do appreciate how his redemption fits into the movie's message, which is about not judging animals based on their natural designs. Lane and Irmgard Claxon from Wendell and Wild. These greedy and entitled business partners have taken over the humble town of Rustbank, but their bigger dream is to create a cash cow prison state. So they agree to let demons Wendell and Wild resurrect the dead in order to rig the vote for a Clax Corp prison. It's really haunting how these wicked sods have decayed this once thriving town, by either driving innocent folks out of business, or much worse, resorting to committing arson at the very cost of employee lives. But the extra twist of the knife is how their insidious solution to covering their sooty tracks is yet more malicious murder. It's like their quick fix for any obstacle is killing people.
I vouched for you the night of the brewery fire.
Indeed.
Bobby's close.
Heck, even their very own daughter becomes the target once she joins the protest against them.
Dear God, Javon's been brainwashed.
Go! Crush them! Oh!
Although, as bloodthirsty as the Claxons are, they do pay a lot of attention to scheme setbacks. Like when they make their devil's deal, they intuitively clock on how raising the dead will come with a risk factor.
Do you plan to raise anyone else from the dead?
Well, our Hell Maiden's parents.
No.
Speaking of, the fact that Irmgard and Lane leap at the chance to accept an unholy transaction from literal demons says volumes about these characters' principles.
We'll pull the permits, fast track construction,
and Bob's your uncle.
Of course, it's the Claxons' actual prison idea that cements their villainy. A monstrous project that can only be described as a nightmare factory that coldly treats potentially redeemable prisoners as disposable golden geese. Although, this is sadly a pretty accurate reflection of real prison system criticism.
You make a pile of money for every prisoner you take. So you pack them in like sardines, provide crap food, crap medical, dangerous conditions, and zero rehabilitation.
Don't fret though, folks, because these sewer-level robbags do meet the fate that they deserve. And I'm pretty sure that their picture-perfect marriage is over too.
How dare you, Lane!
Sewa from My Father's Dragon. When a boy called Elmer tries to rescue Boris the dragon, little does he know that said creature has been holding up the whole island, and the leader of the animals, Sewa, becomes determined to retrieve Boris. This huge gorilla commands himself with intense authority, and is someone who embraces his responsibility as the island's trusted chief. The fascinating thing about Sewa though, is that he's technically a grey area villain. He's not a mustache-twirling tyrant, but rather a well-intentioned leader that puts animal safety first, even if it's at the cost of exploiting a rare creature. So, while Sewa and his team are impressively amazing at tracking the dragon, despite most of them being herbivores, his trail mission can be frequently interrupted because rescues are always his major focus.
Hush now. Hold on, Iris. We'll get you out.
This priority can also make for some compelling conflicts between Sewa and his bad-tempered and anxious minion, Quan the Macaque, as Sewa's idealism constantly clashes against his panic-driven and selfish second-in-command, as their dramatically different initiatives slowly brew an underlying friction that grippingly tests their camaraderie as villain and henchman.
Quan, you must save them.
However, what makes this gorilla villainous is how he's sacrificing an innocent dragon's freedom just to prevent mass hysteria on his island. Oh, and Sewa even tries to manipulate Boris into seeing a noble purpose to his enslavery, while also cruelly neglecting the dragon's trauma.
Do you remember the day you came here, Dragon? You had no idea how to save this island? I helped you do what you knew you could not.
The salt in the wound is that Sewa is also hiding very harsh truths from his fellow animals, just to keep up the illusion of false hope.
Aratua did not help him, because he's dead. Dead?
It's only when Elmer finds a better and new way of saving the island that Sewa realizes the error of his ways, apologizes, and promises to officially end the tradition of dragon slavery. An eventual redemption that's easy to buy when we know that this misguided gorilla, despite his villainy, still has noble principles at heart.
I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I had the answer. I had nothing.
Dr. Onda from Ultraman Rising. The head of the Kaiju Defense Force is determined to find Kaiju Island so that he can wipe out every Kaiju, and he plans to do this by exploiting the echolocator of an infant monster. Some might debate that Onda is simply doing his job and just enforcing protection against Kaiju, but that excuse can only go so far once you start acknowledging his faults. Like, he preaches about public safety, yet he frequently makes ethically questionable decisions, from authorizing his team to eliminate Ultraman to causing citizen endangerment on par with Kaiju attacks. Yes, it's sad that he lost his loved ones to a Kaiju invasion, and kudos to him for sympathizing with similar victims, but it's clear that he's letting his taste for revenge blindside his rationality, to the point where he feels entitled to commit mass genocide.
We will track her back to Kaiju Island and destroy them all.
Onda has total freedom to study these Kaiju, or actively explore alternatives to Kaiju killing, but he's way too eager to choose violence first, and even cruelly exploit these creatures using immoral science.
Emmy, you gotta go, girl. That's not your real mama. She's just a fake. Something the bad man made to trick you.
For most of the film, Onda plays Commander from his lair, but he shows a consistent sense of strategy as a techno-villain, as he keeps his military team consistently in line and cleverly uses advanced drones to outwit our heroes.
Drones have located the target.
Emmy! Behind you! Look out!
He also has a strong screen presence, thanks to how the film soaks him in neon cyberpunk lighting, mainly under the colours of cold blue and danger red, to effectively code his steely fury.
Do we have more drones in the area?
Yes, Doctor. A short distance away.
Send them. Send them now!
However, Onda reaches peak villain power once he climbs into a mech, which he efficiently pilots with unrestrained aggression, while utilizing said giant robot's intense super strength, laser-sharp cyber sword, and near-invincible shield. While Onda fights to eliminate, our family of heroes battle to protect. And this is Onda's ultimate folly. You see, while defending Japan is kind of Onda's motive, deep down, he mainly just wants to end his grief, and he's willing to hurt others to do so. Hence why his last-ditch effort to win is less of a noble sacrifice, and more of an impulsive move that endangers everyone around him. All while Ultraman, who Onda has labeled as a traitor, shows what true, selfless heroism really is. Stucky and Rough from Arlo the Alligator Boy. These two Cajun creeps are trying to run a gator attraction, but it's impossible when their boat is broken. However, their fortunes change when they learn about Arlo the Alligator Boy. There's a lot of charisma to these villains' twangy drawl and countryside shtick, which really helps to make them memorable.
We got nothing to be sued for.
Yeah! Plus, we're dead broke.
But the movie also finds the sinister side to their southern charms. While Stucky and Rough might seem like typical country folk, they're actually genuinely intimidating menaces, both backed up by fierce weapons that give them leverage on their road trip. Most notably, the Beast, their ultimate force of threat for interrogations, and the only character who can outmatch Arlo's superhero bestie.
I love that beast!
There's also something really unsettling about how disturbingly determined they are too. They are relentless as animal catchers, and not even being almost hit with a train carriage discourages their pursuit of poor Arlo.
We gonna follow him, right?
Yeah, of course we're gonna follow them.
Speaking of, it's extra creepy how these fiends have exploitation on their mind 24/7 and express no remorse when it comes to enslaving a gator child for riches.
Back to the swamp with you, little buddy. You're gonna make us rich.
Got a nice fun little cage for you.
Although this movie is so wholesome and heartfelt that its own happy ending even makes our baddies have a change of heart.
Frankly, I had no idea we'd learn all this stuff about the human experience.
However, said redemption does get slightly retconned in the Arlo TV show later. Benedict Arnold from America the Motion Picture. This American-born Brit is working with the King of England to take over America, only to betray His Majesty and lead the British Army all by himself. This amazing and bonkers villain is way too good for the mediocre movie he's in. Like, seriously? He's such a blast to watch, and he has so many strengths as a malevolent menace. There's this smarmy and slimy self-assurance to his villainy that makes him so obnoxious and hateable, yet also undeniably compelling too. Besides totally owning his notoriety for betrayal by reveling in every backstab that he makes.
Why? Because, you double-stuffed buffoon, why would I want to eat a slice?
Oh my god.
When I can eat the whole a pizza pie!
He's also been given a standout voiceover by Andy Samberg, who provides Benedict with a quintessential British villain accent and delivers every line like venom is dripping and oozing from his tongue.
I forgot that you aren't versed in the gentlemanly art of debate like your best friend Abe Lincoln. Or should I say, ex-best friend?
On top of this, Arnold is actually the mastermind of the villain's side, and his brains always outwit the brawn of the flawed heroes, as he relies on inventive tricks or sneaky surprises while taking full advantage of George & Co.'s predictable moves or weaknesses.
A vengeful Washington will be here in 3, 2...
Hey, dickhole! It's time to...
Yes, you indeed.
What's also awesome though, is that he's not just smart, because thanks to being a secret werewolf, Benedict is also surprisingly strong too. His werewolf side not only helps him to be exceptionally nimble for a stocky fellow, but also easily outmatch the Brickhouse characters leading the revolution. Oh, and his shocking monster powers make him into a furry war machine in the already chaotic finale.
Georgie, you think you've won?
Sure, werewolves have their famous Achilles heel, but our characters need a heap of metal just to make one effective silver bullet. However, overcoming said obstacle helps to make the payoff all the more satisfying. Crumb and Ellingbo from Klaus. These two rival Smirensburg clans have been at war for generations, but their daily brawls are interrupted when postman Jesper and toymaker Klaus introduce Christmas to the island, a festivity that annoys both clans so much that they form a truce to stop it. There's no deep lore or historic betrayal to justify or explain the combative relationship between these clans. It's just a vapid and mean-spirited conflict that shows how tradition for the sake of tradition is just illogical.
Now, I just know you didn't mean to disrespect all of that heritage, right?
Right.
All this fighting has done is turned Smirensburg into a miserable and drab hellhole, with a hollow culture that's defined entirely by clockwork violence and forced hatred. To make things worse, the adults' pig-headedness has led to a child loneliness epidemic and a troubling lack of public education, resulting in a community that can never progress, let alone be happy.
What happened was...
That came out wrong.
I took a teaching job at a place where people don't send their kids to school. Mingling with their sworn enemy spawn? Oh no, we can't have that.
Once these clans unite, we end up with a villain duo who are a comically chaotic mix of strategic and inept. Because while Crumb is a proud and intelligent woman, Ellingbo is as dumb as a bag of bricks.
Who?
I mean... How have we never defeated you?
On the one hand, these combined clans can come up with some pretty weaselly and clever schemes that effectively slide a thorn into a hero's wholesomeness. But on the other hand, I have to say that Crumb is the one doing all the thinking.
I would never, in a million years, have done what I just did if I didn't think these were...
After them!
I think these villains' best purpose in their film, though, is how they represent all things anti-Christmas, and the complete opposite of festive values. They're essentially a cult of Grinches. The joke is on these bitter and grumpy parents, though, because despite their desperate attempts to pass on their hate, it's their very own offspring that end up adorably breaking the cycle, thus showing how unconditional love is far more powerful than petty ancestral drama.
A true act of goodwill always sparks another.
I think you hit your head pretty hard, dear. You should lie back down.
Captain Crow from the Sea Beast. The captain of the Inevitable is a stern and courageous man who sails the seas to slay monsters for the king and queen, but he mainly has his eyes on the legendary Red Bluster. In one encounter against Red though, it seems like the beast has eaten Crow's second in command, Jacob, and new girl Maisie, but they're both actually fine and soon learn that sea beasts themselves have been misrepresented. This gothic sailor is an exceptional monster hunter who can concede that his target enemies are clever creatures, but never holds back as a beast slayer.
I strike at thee, devil!
However, it's Crow's determination to prove a hunter's societal value, coupled with a personal grudge towards the Red Bluster, that has made him into a very sensitive and prideful hunter, with a temper that's on par with his passion.
All of your wealth and power, all of this is nothing compared to a hunter's fury.
At the same time though, he's also a very sentimental man, who has a soft spot for kids, and this has led to a strong bond with Jacob, whom Crow rescued as a child. So when we combine Crow's intense sense of hunter honor with his fatherly fondness for Jacob, we end up with a fascinatingly complicated and contradictive man, because he can't simply embrace both. When one is now going against the other, the captain uses his vengeful grief for Jacob as an excuse to break the hunter's code and recklessly ruin all sense of morale on his ship. Yet once an alive Jacob presents the truth about sea beasts, Crow is prepared to part ways with the man that he's raised.
So I ask you, Jacob, my son, are you my enemy?
At the end of the day, this emotionally charged captain is one of many tragic victims of the exploitative monarchy, but Crow himself is too stubbornly proud to accept the idea that he's been used, and the legacy that he's been pursuing was founded on propaganda, which is a natural and understandable human reaction to a harsh truth.
You've laid down your lance and think it's made you strong. But you've turned your back on your own kind.
It's only when the brave Maisie cracks the lid on the Empire's lies that Crow can finally humble himself and healthily let go of a lifelong hollow chase. Podesta from Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. This Italian fascist official is a major authority figure who ends up trying to turn Pinocchio into the perfect soldier. There's no denying that this is Netflix Animation's most creepy movie villain, a coldly serious and imposing man with the timber, commanding voice of Ron Perlman.
You filthy coward! Yes, you are weak.
The Podesta's mind has become so consumed by fascist theories and ideologies that war and order are the only things that make his dark brain tick, as he preaches values that only benefit fascist Italy's growing power.
You will learn to fight and fire a weapon and be a real Italian boy.
At first, the Podesta is repulsed by Pinocchio, because his oddball personality and embracement of free will represent the very opposite of the fascist youth mold. In a way, the Podesta actually fears this puppet, because he's a threat to authority and normality. However, once the Podesta learns that Pinny can return from death, suddenly the villain sees loads of potential in this sentient puppet, which is a true reflection of how society will always outcast or mock the weird, but then suddenly value them once their uniqueness has an exploitative use. Even as a father, the Podesta is a frosty fellow, because he's replaced all of his love for his son with military brainwashing and toxic principles. So, heartbreakingly, Candlewick has become a deeply neglected child who craves respect and attention from a man who demands an evil robot for a son. Although, the Podesta is at his most brutal when he orders poor Candlewick to shoot Binny, a cruel and heartless request that really shows how little the Podesta treasures his son's feelings. However, even though the Podesta sees his son as a useless coward, he fails to realize that strength isn't about how much compassion you can abandon, but being brave enough to stand up to those who lack sympathy.
I'm thin and weak and flimsy, just like the wick of a candle. Always afraid. But even then, with all the fear I feel, I can say no to you. I can do that.
I'm so glad that the Podesta gets the most over-the-top villain death on this list too, because he really deserves to go out in a ridiculous way. Count Volpe, from Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. The struggling traveling showman longs for wealth, and his luck changes for him when he discovers Pinocchio, the puppet with no strings. So, he turns Penny into a star attraction for his road theatre, and finds huge success. There's a dynamite spark to this villain that keeps our constant attention as an audience. A fiery energy and theatrical magnetism that blends charismatically spry stop-motion animation with the hypnotically enthusiastic voice of Christoph Waltz.
He either performs or you owe me 10 million lira!
It's this very allure that also serves as Volpe's trademark strength, wicked cunning. You see, Volpe has a gift for manipulating potential acts for his show, and he can use shady tactics to exploit said performers' wants or desires, while also dropping a hint of pressure to rush them into a dark contract.
For today's the only day that our cacophonous carnival will visit your vicinity, but if you must go to school, then you must go to school.
When Penny begins working for Volpe, it seems like fun at first, but the boy is too naive to notice big red flags, a vulnerability that makes him susceptible to the Count's lies, and loses agency as a child performer.
5 minutes, please.
3 minutes.
The thing is though, as sleazy and exploitative as Volpe is, he actually genuinely loves the arts. Not only is he a skilled violinist and captivating stage presence, but he also expresses a sincere pride for his vision and a passion for the world of theatre. Yes, his work is mainly war propaganda, but his patriotism as a fascist is very real, and I'd say that his fanaticism for Mussolini is on par with his love for the stage.
Your Excellency, I wrote this number just for you.
Although, it's this very pride that marks his downfall, as he's so viciously obsessed with finding success as Italy's #1 propaganda artist that he ends up arrogantly dropping his nice guy act, and Penny unsurprisingly rebels against the control freak director.
The pooping hand.
Whoop. Yes, whoop, Your Excellency.
Duce, go smell your farts and pray.
Of course, Volpe does try to get his revenge later, but that also backfires too, because Penny's unconditional kindness to the long-time abused Spazzatura inspires the monkey to be just as brave as the puppet. Feel free to watch my other villain ranking videos, folks. I've been Jambareeqi, cheerio.